This week in AI has been absolutely wild. From Sam Altman publicly clearing the mess created by OpenAI CFO, to Meta dumping AI slop to Europe, to Kim Kardashian blaming ChatGPT for her failure. I'm your host Daniel, and welcome to the AI Weekly. We are going to deep dive into top AI news of this week, so let's get into it. Alright, let's start with OpenAI, because honestly, it's been a roller coaster. OpenAI's CFO, Sarah Friar, spoke at a Wall Street Journal event this week and casually said she wanted the US government to backstop OpenAI's loans, meaning taxpayers would guarantee the company's debt. Here is the clip.
We are absolutely using chips that are like A100 equivalents that have been around like maybe 6-7 years at this point in time. If that's the case, financing chips gets a lot easier. If the timeline on the chip stays short, that gets harder. And so this is where we're looking for an ecosystem of banks, private equity, maybe even governmental, like the ways governments can come to bear.
Meaning like a federal subsidy or something?
Meaning like just first of all, the backstop, the guarantee that allows the financing to happen. That can really drop the cost of the financing, but also increase the loan to value, so the amount of debt that you can take on top of an equity portion for
so some federal backstop for chip investment.
Exactly. And I think we're seeing that. I think the US government in particular has been incredibly forward-leaning, has really understood that AI is almost a national strategic asset, and that we really need to be thoughtful when we think about competition with, for example, China. Are we doing all the right things to grow our AI ecosystem as fast as possible?
Are you talking to the White House about how to further formalize that kind of backstop?
We're always being brought in by the White House to give our point of view as an expert on what's happening in the sector, for sure.
So basically she said, if OpenAI defaulted on those massive infrastructure loans, the US government, that means we the taxpayers, would cover the losses. After the clip went viral, the reaction was brutal. Critics on X exploded, calling it a potential AI bailout. People were like, wait, OpenAI, the company that's partnering with Microsoft and raising billions from investors, now wants taxpayers to help fund their chips? Within hours, Friar had to backtrack. She posted on LinkedIn saying, I want to clarify my comments earlier today. OpenAI is not seeking a government backstop. I used the wrong word. And here's where things really started heating up. Trump's newly appointed AI czar, David Sachs, weighed in on X. He said, there will be no federal bailout for AI. The US has at least 5 major frontier model companies. If one fails, others will take its place. He added that the government's real focus is on making power generation easier, not handing out guarantees. And in a surprising twist, Sachs actually defended Friar for clarifying her statement, calling the whole thing a misunderstanding. Still, the damage was done, and to clean this mess, Sam Altman had to jump in himself. He said, we do not have or want government guarantees for OpenAI data centers. We believe that governments should not pick winners or losers, and that taxpayers should not bail out companies that make bad business decisions or otherwise lose in the market. If one company fails, other companies will do good work. What we do think might make sense is governments building and owning their own AI infrastructure, but then the upside of that should flow to the government as well. We can imagine a world where governments decide to offtake a lot of computing power and get to decide how to use it. And it may make sense to provide lower cost of capital to do so. Building a strategic national reserve of computing power makes a lot of sense. But this should be for the government's benefit, not the benefit of private companies. Honestly, I respect that. Taxpayers shouldn't be the ones paying for companies that make bad business decisions. So now let's move on to second big news of the week. Meta announced on Thursday that Vibes, its short-form video feed of AI-generated videos, is launching in Europe in the Meta AI app. Just like a TikTok or Instagram Reels, but every single video you come across is AI-generated. With Vibes, you can create and share short-form AI-generated videos and access a dedicated feed that displays AI videos from others. Meta says, your feed will become more personalized to your interests over time. When creating content, you can generate a video using prompts or remix someone else's video. You can add new visuals, layer in music, or adjust styles to match your individual taste. Meta claims that since the US launch, media generation in the app has jumped more than tenfold. But downloads still trail OpenAI's Sora significantly. In my opinion, Meta is so desperate to compete with OpenAI's Sora. Okay, so next news is even more hilarious. In a Vanity Fair interview, Kim Kardashian said ChatGPT is her frenemy. Kim Kardashian, who has been studying to become a lawyer, discussed her toxic friendship with ChatGPT, admitting that she has failed law exams due to ChatGPT. She said, "I use ChatGPT for legal advice. So when I am needing to know the answer to a question, I will take a picture and snap it and put it in there," she said. "They're always wrong. It has made me fail tests. And then I'll get mad and I'll yell at it and be like, 'You made me fail.'" Well, honestly, ChatGPT is prone to hallucinations, meaning that the LLM will create fake answers sometimes, rather than admit that it cannot confidently respond to a prompt. This technology isn't necessarily programmed to know what information is correct or not. Rather, it is trained on an unfathomably massive heap of data and prompted to predict the most likely response to an input which may not be factually accurate. Some lawyers have been sanctioned for using ChatGPT when writing legal briefs, which becomes obvious to those reviewing the briefs since they cite cases that don't exist. Let's talk about OpenAI and Amazon's $38 billion cloud computing deal. This partnership means OpenAI will now use AWS compute power to scale agentic workloads, the kind of systems that can think, reason, and act semi-autonomously. They plan to deploy all this capacity before 2026, with options to expand beyond 2027. It's part of OpenAI's massive roadmap spending over $1 trillion in the next decade on computing infrastructure, data centers, and advanced chips from NVIDIA, AMD, and Broadcom. All this while freeing themselves from Microsoft's exclusive control. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you're new here, hit subscribe for more AI news and drama from the AI world.